ready to journey into a cosmos where loyalty is tested and heroes rise from the most unexpected places? If you crave tales of bravery, friendships beyond worlds, and the mysteries of the stars, then join us on this epic adventure. Be sure to subscribe to Alien Whispers right now so you don't miss a single story from across the galaxy. And now, let Alien Whispers tell you the saga of the Crimson King, an invaluable lesson in loyalty he discovered. The Crimson King, Valerius of Icthar, his skin a deep, battle-scarred red, lay sprawled amidst the skeletal remains of his fallen sky warriors. Each ragged breath burned his lungs, thick with the acrid stench of plasma fire and pulverized rock. Once he had been the unyielding shield of countless star systems, his roar echoing across nebulae. Now, he was a broken husk, left to bleed out on the desolate, crater-pocked surface of Xylos, a forgotten frontier world. The echoes of the devastating void scythe war faded into an ominous silence, broken only by the distant, mournful shriek of the planet's atmospheric winds. His gaze drifted to the perpetually twilight horizon, where twin, dying suns cast a sickly orange glow, and he waited, a futile hope clutching at his weary spirit, for aid that would never come. He remembered the packs of iron and starlight, his former allies, the crystalline Lumina and the formidable Obsidian Concord, had forged with him. They had sworn ancient oaths, vows of unwavering loyalty and mutual defense, forged in eras of shared conquest and spilled cosmic dust. He had fought for them, led his elite forces to safeguard their fragile homeworlds, even sacrificed his own kin to protect theirs. And now, in his absolute darkest hour, they had abandoned him. Each one, from the calculating Lumina Council to the stoic Obsidian Grandmasters, cowered in abject fear of the new galactic overlord, the Shadow Blight, an entity that had swept through the cosmos like a plague, consuming entire civilizations. Bitterness, sharp as a Cthar battle blade, clawed at his chest. So this was the fate of the mighty Crimson King, to be forgotten, discarded, treated as nothing more than a discarded pawn on a galactic chessboard where he once reigned supreme. As the cold tendrils of darkness began to creep into the edges of his vision, he sensed something, a faint, rhythmic hum in the distance. He forced his heavy eyelids open, half expecting to see the Shadow Blight's dread legions returning to finish him. But instead, he glimpsed something utterly strange. A small, unassuming human scout vessel, the Venture, hovering cautiously above the shattered landscape. Humans, the Terran coalition, a relatively young race, often underestimated in the grand, ancient schemes of the galaxy. They lacked the advanced plasma weaponry and towering dreadnoughts of the elder civilizations. They were explorers, traders, wanderers, unlikely heroes in a war waged by cosmic empires. Valerius scoffed, a dry, bloody sound escaping his lips. Why would they dare approach? What could they possibly hope to achieve here, on a planet drenched in the blood of empires? Within the Venture's cramped cockpit, a heated discussion unfolded. The Terran crew, having scanned the surface, had identified the critically wounded Cthar monarch. They knew of him, knew of his people's legendary ferocity and their storied, brutal past. Captain Elias Thorne, a veteran of dozens of deep space salvage operations, hesitated, cautioning against involvement. "We owe him nothing," he muttered, his voice gravelly. "Getting mixed up in their wars will bring nothing but trouble for us. Leave him be. He's not our concern." His first officer, Commander Lyra Vance, a woman with keen, intelligent eyes and vibrant auburn hair, listened torn. The odds were grim, and helping this alien could mean certain death if they were caught in the crossfire of rival factions, or, worse, by the Shadow Blight's relentless patrols. But there was something else, something they couldn't ignore, a deep-seated sense of moral imperative that had long defined humanity's ventures into the vast unknown. "He's alone out there," Lyra said softly, her voice echoing in the tense silence. "Abandoned, left to die by those who called him friend. If we turn our backs now, we're no better than they are." "What does that make us, Elias?" Silence filled the cockpit, heavy and suffocating. Each crew member grappled with the immense risks, the looming threat of retaliation. But in their eyes, a spark of unyielding determination flared. One by one, they nodded, sealing their decision without words. They would not stand by while a warrior, any warrior, was left to perish in betrayal's cold grip. They were Terrans, and this was their code. As the venture began its descent, Valerius tensed, his remaining strength coiling in preparation for a desperate, final fight. When the humans finally stepped out, approaching him with cautious but resolute expressions, he met their gaze with suspicion. In a voice weak but laced with the pride of his fallen empire, he addressed them. "You come to mock me? To witness the fall of one once mighty." His tone was biting, laden with the corrosive mistrust born of too many recent betrayals. But Commander Vance shook her head, stepping forward. Her movements were fluid, graceful, even in her heavy flight suit. "No, we're here to help. We couldn't ignore a soul left behind. Not even yours, King Valerius." Her words, simple yet firm, held no trace of falsehood. She extended her hand, a gesture as alien to the Cathar king as it was humbling. No other race, steeped in the brutal pragmatism of galactic politics, would dare risk so much for so little. These humans, so young, so small in the grand scheme, seemed almost foolish. And yet, as he looked into Lyra's eyes, he found no malice, only genuine, unwavering resolve. The king's voice softened, his defenses wavering. "Why would you risk yourselves for me? You owe me nothing." His words, usually sharp and authoritative, now held a hint of profound vulnerability. "Sometimes it's not about what we owe," Lyra replied, her voice steady. "It's about what's right. It's about who we choose to be." With that, they began to treat his gruesome wounds, working with careful, practiced hands and solemn expressions. The Crimson King watched them, bewildered, feeling a strange warmth that had long been absent, a flicker of nascent trust. It had been cycles, not just years, since anyone had shown him such unconditional kindness, and he couldn't help but feel the weight of it settle into the deep cracks of his spirit. As the Terrans prepared to move him, the king felt his strength waning, yet his inherent Cathar pride refused to falter. He cast a final, lingering look at the ravaged battlefield, the smoldering remains of his proud Ska warriors, the broken promises scattered like ashes on the toxic winds. And in that moment, he knew he would not forget this. This audacious act of bravery, this steadfast refusal to abandon even the weakest, most solitary soul. These humans, these unlikely rescuers, had given him more than just aid. They had reignited something within him, a flame he had thought lost amidst the ruins of loyalty and honor. And so, as they lifted his heavy, crimson form, he whispered a promise, one meant for himself as much as for them. "If I live, I swear, my people, the Cathar, will remember this day. We will remember the Terrans who did what no other race dared to do." Commander Vance nodded, her gaze steady, resolute. "We're not leaving you behind, King Valerius. Not now, not ever." The words were spoken with a finality, unyielding as forged star drive metal. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the Crimson King allowed himself to believe. In a universe where raw power ruled and ancient promises crumbled to dust, these humans, these strange, tenacious creatures, had proven themselves fundamentally different. As they carried him away from the field of ultimate betrayal, he realized that he was no longer just a fallen king, left to die. He was a survivor, a witness to a rare and precious thing, a glimpse of loyalty that even the chilling embrace of death could not extinguish. The rescue had begun, but every step forward seemed perilous. They maneuvered through Xylos's hostile terrain, a jagged landscape of shattered crystal formations and boiling tar pits. Each member of the Terran coalition team remained on high alert, nerves taut like a taut bowstring. They knew that any moment could bring them face to face with patrols from the Shadow Blight's brutal forces, who roamed this war-scarred planet with ruthless efficiency. This wasn't just a mission, it was a desperate gamble with their lives, deep behind enemy lines. They moved quickly, their specialized grav boots muffled against the ground, knowing they couldn't afford to draw attention. Commander Vance had divided their roles with precise military efficiency. Some scouted ahead, their optical scanners sweeping for thermal signatures, while others carried the necessary medical supplies, anticipating the further injuries Valerius would inevitably sustain. These soldiers weren't unseasoned. They'd seen enough brutal conflicts to understand the immense weight of what they were attempting. But this was different. They weren't fighting for strategic objectives or territorial gain. They were risking everything to save a lone, battered alien monarch, one they had no true reason to protect, yet couldn't bring themselves to leave behind. It was a choice that defied cold logic, born of an intrinsic human empathy. As they crept closer to the king's location, the oppressive silence of the desolate planet was suddenly shattered by the low, guttural rumble of Shadow Blight patrol skimmers. The team froze, every member instinctively blending into the jagged shadows of the rock formations, holding their breath. They watched as a squad of menacing, obsidian-armored figures rolled by, their multi-jointed limbs clicking rhythmically, completely oblivious to the hidden Terrans lying in wait. Seconds stretched into agonizing minutes, but the team remained disciplined, trusting each other's instincts, moving only when the chilling hum of the skimmers had completely faded. Even as their hearts pounded against their ribs, they maintained their composure, driven by something deeper than mere duty, a shared, unspoken vow. When they finally reached the Crimson King, he looked worse than they'd anticipated. His deep red skin was now crisscrossed with fresh, angry burns, and his regal, horned brow was furrowed with an exhaustion that went beyond physical pain. His multifaceted eyes, once sharp and fiercely proud, now held a weary acceptance. He seemed almost resigned, a proud being who had prepared himself for the inevitable end. But as the humans approached, he slowly raised his head, studying them with guarded curiosity, unsure of what to expect from these strange, tenacious rescuers. The team's primary medic, a lean, efficient woman named Anya Sharma, knelt beside him, her movements precise. She gently began examining his grievous injuries, her touch surprisingly delicate. Without a word, Valerius grunted, instinctively pulling back, a primal Kthar reflex, before he realized there was no threat in the human's touch, only meticulous care. He allowed them to work, bewildered by their quiet, unwavering dedication. These were not the actions of warriors bound by political alliances or cold, calculated pacts. These were acts of pure, unadulterated mercy, untainted by self-interest. It was a humbling experience, even for a king who had seen and survived countless brutal interstellar battles. Commander Vance signaled for the extraction to proceed, and the team moved quickly to prepare him for transport. As they worked, another Shadow Blight patrol approached, closer this time, their automated sensors sweeping the immediate area. The humans didn't panic. Instead, they moved with calculated speed, positioning themselves in protective stances around the king, their compact energy rifles raised, ready to defend him even at the cost of their own lives. Valerius watched, astounded, as these humans, who owed him nothing, who could have left him to his grim fate, placed themselves squarely between him and imminent danger without a moment's hesitation. One of the soldiers, a young, earnest man named Jax, caught sight of the approaching patrol's glinting optical sensors and whispered urgently, "Commander, inbound. We need to move now." But their movements weren't chaotic. They were precise, disciplined, a testament to their rigorous Terran training. In that moment, the king felt something strange, something akin to a spark of genuine hope he hadn't allowed himself to feel in ages. They lifted him, each soldier bearing a part of his considerable weight, and he felt a pang of vulnerability he had long tried to suppress. But as they helped him move, he began to understand something profound he had overlooked in his own empire and among his so-called allies. Loyalty born not of obligation, but of unyielding choice. These humans had chosen to help him, to risk everything for a being from another world, a dying monarch of a fallen empire. It was a truth that struck him deeper than any physical wound. As they made their way through the unforgiving terrain, the king whispered, almost to himself, his voice raspy, "Your people, you value life so differently. Why?" The soldier beside him, a seasoned combat engineer named Rihanna, glanced up, offering a brief, firm nod. Her face was smudged with dirt, but her eyes held a calm intensity. "We don't leave people behind, King Valerius. Not if there's a chance. Not even if they're not like us. It's a core principle." The king fell silent, absorbing the words, watching as they maneuvered around dangerous obstacles with him, shielding him from dangers as if he were one of their own cherished comrades. It was a concept utterly foreign to him, yet one that resonated deeply within his ancient spirit. He saw how they moved as a cohesive unit, their loyalty to each other, and now, remarkably, to him, evident in every precise, coordinated step. It was more than mere bravery. It was a bond built on profound trust and shared purpose, a stark contrast to the brittle alliances he had known. As they neared their designated extraction point, a hidden ravine known as the Whispering Scar, their path was suddenly blocked by a detachment of Vekler mercenaries, heavily armed and ready. These mercenaries, their skin a mottled green and their eyes like black beads, were notorious for their brutality and their absolute lack of moral compass. The humans braced themselves, forming a protective line in front of the king, their weapons raised. Despite being significantly outgunned by the brutish Vekler, they stood their ground, every single one of them prepared to defend this wounded alien monarch they had only just met. One of the lead mercenaries, a hulking brute with gleaming fangs, sneered, eyeing the humans with disdain. "Why risk your insignificant lives for this crimson relic?" he taunted, his voice a gravelly snarl. "He's a dead man walking, an empire fallen." But Commander Vance didn't flinch, her voice steady, unwavering, cutting through the Vekler's mockery. "We don't abandon our own, mercenary, and anyone we choose to save becomes one of ours." The mercenary scoffed, leveling his weapon, but the human resolve didn't waver. In a flash, the Terran team moved with coordinated precision, disarming the Vekler in a series of swift, calculated close-quarters attacks. The skirmish was brief but intensely brutal, ending with the humans victorious. The Crimson King watched, utterly astonished. These were not the seasoned, hardened soldiers of some vast, ancient empire. They were ordinary beings who, through sheer will, incredible unity, and an unwavering moral code, had overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. As the final mercenary fell, the team continued their march, breathing heavily but undeterred. They didn't speak of their victory, didn't celebrate. They merely carried on, focused on one singular thing, getting the king to safety. When they finally reached the extraction zone, the king looked at each of them in turn, his gaze heavy with a profound, newfound respect. These humans, with their small vessel and humble equipment, had defied the galaxy's cruel expectations. They had risked everything for him, a stranger, an outsider, a symbol of a forgotten era. And in doing so, they had shown him a kind of strength that no weapon or empire could ever match. As he prepared to board their vessel, he managed a whisper of gratitude, his voice thick with emotions he rarely allowed himself to feel. "You are unlike any I have known." "Truly," Commander Vance nodded, giving him a look that held no trace of arrogance, only a quiet, unshakable determination. "We just did what was right, King Valerius. It's in our nature." And as the Venture's engines roared to life, lifting them off the desolate, blood-soaked planet, the Crimson King realized that in the vastness of the galaxy, true honor was not found in power or conquest, but in the courage to stand by those who had been cast aside and the willingness to protect those who had been forgotten. As the Venture ascended, leaving behind the barren wasteland of Xylos, King Valerius felt the immense weight of exhaustion pressing down on him, but also something profoundly unfamiliar, a quiet, blossoming comfort. He watched the Terrans around him, each one focused and determined, yet not driven by rigid military orders, but by a choice they had made willingly. In a life ruled by alliances of cold convenience and broken pacts, this decision to save him seemed almost naive, even foolish. Yet here it was, as real as the throbbing pain that coursed through his crimson body. The human medics, led by Anya, worked quickly, cleaning his wounds with practiced, efficient hands. Their touch was steady and gentle, devoid of the hesitation or fear he often encountered from other species when tending to Icthar. Valerius found himself marveling at their quiet, yet firm focus. He had been attended to by the finest healers of the Lumina and the Obsidian Concord, yet this was different. There was no pretense, no underlying agenda in their movements. It was a care that didn't come from duty, but from something far more profound, a fundamental respect for life itself. Anya, noticing his silent, intense observation, offered a reassuring smile. "Not so used to getting help, are you, King Valerius?" she said with a lightness that was both comforting and utterly strange to him. The king managed a grunt, then a slow nod, unsure how to respond. He had never been a figure who inspired ease or warmth. His very presence often commanded fear or awe. Yet here were these humans, tending to him as though he were no different from one of their own wounded soldiers. Between ragged breaths, he couldn't help but ask, "Do all your people value strangers this way? What makes you do this?" His voice was barely above a whisper, raw from the brutal battle and the deeper wound of betrayal. Anya paused, glancing briefly at Commander Vance before answering. "We're not here to calculate worth based on species, King. We help because that's who we are. It's woven into our very fabric." She returned to her work, her words lingering in the air like a quiet, profound revelation. For a moment, the king felt exposed, vulnerable, not just in body, but in spirit. He had lived his entire life by a different code, one that valued strength and loyalty, but always with a clearly defined limit. As they treated him, he found himself listening to the soft exchanges between the Terrans. They spoke in low tones, discussing tactical updates, sharing brief memories from past missions, sometimes even offering bits of dry humor to lighten the grim tension. There was a deep, unspoken bond between them, one built not just on duty, but on something far more personal. It was like a family forged in the fires of shared peril, each one willing to protect the others without question or hesitation. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt anything close to this. His own kin, his former allies, they had stood by him in battle, yes, but each act of loyalty had come with a precise calculation, an understanding that there were inherent limits to their bonds. But these humans, with their seemingly lesser technology and youthful race, seemed to care for one another with a fervor that defied Icthar logic. They did not question their commitment, did not falter in their resolve, even as they traveled deeper into potential danger zones. At one point, Commander Vance leaned down beside him, assessing his condition with a concerned look. "You're a warrior, King Valerius," the commander said, almost in awe, "a leader of one of the galaxy's most formidable races. And yet, they left you." The words held no judgment, only a quiet, empathetic sadness. The king, unable to completely hide his lingering bitterness, replied, "They left because loyalty is a currency, traded as easily as galactic credits. I was useful once. Now, to them, I am merely an inconvenience." His tone was laced with the sharp sting of betrayal, the kind that could only come from those he had once implicitly trusted. Commander Vance shook her head, meeting the king's multifaceted gaze with unflinching sincerity. "In our ranks, King, loyalty isn't something you trade. It's something you choose. Once we make that choice, we don't look back." There was a solemn, unshakable pride in her words, a conviction that the king found himself both admiring and, surprisingly, envying. A quiet settled over them, each human focused intently on their tasks, ensuring their path through the hostile star lanes remained clear of potential shadow blight threats. King Valerius, despite his agonizing injuries, began to feel a profound sense of calm he hadn't experienced in eons. He was no longer surrounded by treacherous allies or relentless foes plotting his downfall. Here, He was among individuals who had chosen to stand by him without expectation, without hidden gain. It was an experience that slowly, patiently chipped away at the thick, protective walls he had built around himself, walls that had shielded him from the searing pain of broken loyalties and fractured bonds. Time passed in a steady, almost rhythmic silence as the venture traversed the void. The humans exchanged knowing glances and subtle hand signals, navigating the star lanes with a precision born of countless treacherous journeys. At one point, King Valerius, feeling a strange, irresistible urge to reciprocate their unexpected trust, began to share tales from his own ancient past. He spoke of his youth on the burning plains of Cthar Prime, of legendary battles fought against cosmic horrors, and of alliances forged and, more often than not, ultimately broken. He recounted the crushing weight of leadership, the endless political machinations, and the chilling compromises demanded by galactic power. They listened intently, absorbing his words with a profound respect that took him by surprise. They didn't interrupt, didn't question his honor, didn't dismiss him as a mere relic of time gone by. They simply listened, their expressions conveying a genuine curiosity and empathy he hadn't thought possible from any non-Cathar. One of the soldiers, Jax, hearing a particularly sorrowful tale of a pivotal battle lost due to a swift betrayal, looked at him with a mixture of respect and deep empathy. "You've seen a lot of death, haven't you, King Valerius?" he asked gently, his voice quiet. The king nodded, the raw memories flashing in his mind like ghosts he had tried to bury for millennia. And yet, here they were, resurfacing, finding a voice he hadn't realized he so desperately wanted to share. "Death is part of the path we choose, Terran," he said finally, his voice softened by exhaustion and the unexpected comfort of their presence. "It is the inevitable end of any warrior. But betrayal cuts deeper than any weapon. It poisons the soul." The humans exchanged solemn glances, each one understanding the profound weight of those words, even if they had never experienced such a shattering loss of faith themselves. It was a shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement of a pain that transcended language or species. Commander Vance, glancing over her shoulder from the pilot's console, offered a small, reassuring nod. "You're safe with us, King. No one's leaving you behind. We promise you that." The sheer simplicity of her words brought an unexpected, profound comfort to the king's battle-hardened spirit. King Valerius, a being forged in honor and pride, allowed himself to close his multifaceted eyes, letting his guard down for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The journey continued, each mile bringing him closer to safety, but also deeper into the intricate bonds of trust he hadn't realized he could still form. He could hear the humans making plans, discussing contingency measures, ensuring every possible threat was accounted for. They treated him as one of their own, not with the deference of subjects to a king, but with the genuine respect given to an equal, a valued comrade. They called him King Valerius, or simply Valerius, treating him with a dignity that was both formal and intimately personal. At last, as they neared their designated rendezvous point with the main Terran fleet, he opened his eyes, feeling the crushing exhaustion lifting, replaced by a new, burning resolve. He looked at each of them in turn, his voice steady but filled with a profound weight he hadn't allowed himself to express before. "If there is ever a time," he began, choosing his words with immense care, "when your people, the Terran Coalition, need an ally, the Cthar, my people, will remember this day. I will answer. We will answer for you. There will be no hesitation, no question of cost." The humans exchanged glances, some surprised by the depth of his promise, others nodding with quiet, almost humble acceptance. Commander Vance smiled, her expression one of mutual respect and understanding. "Then we're honored, King Valerius, and we remember as well. Always." With that, the Crimson King knew that something fundamental within him had irrevocably changed. No longer was he just a relic of forgotten battles or a symbol of forsaken loyalty. In this harrowing journey, in this extraordinary act of mercy and trust, He had found something he hadn't realized he was desperately searching for. A family, not by blood or ancient lineage, but by choice. A bond unbroken by the cruel politics of galactic empires or the brittle nature of fleeting packs. And as they finally neared their destination, the shimmering expanse of the Terran home fleet, he allowed himself a small, genuine smile, knowing that even in a galaxy torn by greed and unending betrayal, true loyalty could still be found in the unlikeliest of places. As the Venture docked smoothly within the massive bay of the Terran flagship, the TCS Vanguard, King Valerius sensed the lingering weight of his arduous journey lifting entirely. His injuries, though still severe, felt strangely lighter somehow, his resolve stronger than it had been in cycles. He was leaving behind the desolate wasteland of betrayal, ascending towards something greater, something he now believed in. An alliance forged not in power or strategic necessity, but in shared courage and unwavering compassion. The Terrans around him, silent and meticulously focused on post-flight checks, had given him something he hadn't felt in a very long time, a profound reason to believe in loyalty without price. Once inside the vast medical bay of the Vanguard, Valerius looked out at the now distant, barren world of Xylos below, fading into the endless darkness of space. It was strange. He felt no lingering bitterness, only a quiet, definitive sense of closure. That planet, with its empty promises and broken oaths, no longer held him in its cruel grasp. His gaze turned to the humans who had risked so much for him, driven not by gain or glory, but by a deep-seated belief in something he was only beginning to truly comprehend. He felt something uncharacteristic, almost overwhelming, a wave of profound gratitude, although he struggled to put it into the terse, direct language of his Cathar tongue. Commander Vance approached him, her movements precise even in the bustling medical bay, giving him a respectful nod. "We're in safe space now, King Valerius," she said simply, as if this extraordinary act of heroism were an everyday occurrence for the Terran coalition. But the king knew better. He had witnessed countless species turn their backs on those in dire need, had watched proud allies flee when the price of aid grew too high. These humans had done the unthinkable, acting not out of calculated duty, but out of pure, unselfish choice, and that made all the difference. After a moment of profound silence, the king finally spoke, his voice steady though each word felt as though it carried the weight of a lifetime of empires and betrayals. "What you have done is beyond what any of my own former allies would dare. It is unprecedented." He paused, struggling to express the true depth of his thoughts, the transformation they had wrought within him. "If you ever, at any time, call upon Cathar, I will answer. My people will answer for you. There will be no hesitation, no calculation of cost or risk, only unwavering loyalty." Commander Vance nodded, her expression one of quiet, mutual respect. "Then we'll count on that, King Valerius. But hopefully, it won't come to that for a long, long time." She didn't linger, returning to her duties, but her words left an indelible impression. The king could sense the Terrans' commitment ran deeper than the immediate moment. They did not seek immediate reward or galactic recognition. They simply held to their beliefs, to their internal moral compass. As the Vanguard moved steadily away from the battle-torn Xylos system, the king overheard the humans discussing their journey home. They spoke of returning to loved ones waiting, of lives far removed from the endless, brutal wars and shifting allegiances that had defined his own existence. For them, this mission, this act of daring rescue, was but one extraordinary chapter in their lives. Yet they had faced it with a quiet courage that resonated deeply with him. They had fought not out of ambition or a thirst for conquest, but because it was their way, their unspoken code, a profound valuing of every life. One of the younger technicians, sensing his gaze, offered him a slight, empathetic nod. "You fought hard down there, sir," he said simply, as if recognizing the sheer strength it took not just to survive the battle, but the deeper wound of betrayal. The king returned the nod, finding unexpected comfort in the young Terran's unassuming words. It was an acknowledgement that needed no explanation, no flowery language. They respected him not for his fallen title, but for the raw, unyielding strength they had witnessed. In the quiet moments that followed, the king reflected on his own brutal path. He had been raised to believe that loyalty was a finite resource, something earned and spent according to pragmatic need, often evaporating in the face of overwhelming odds. Yet these humans, a younger race, with seemingly less to gain from such a risky endeavor, saw loyalty as a constant, an unbreakable bond not weakened by fear or hesitation. He realized they had taught him something he hadn't known he needed. That true strength came not just from overwhelming power or military might, but from the simple, unyielding willingness to protect those in need, no matter the personal cost. As they approached their final destination, a bustling Terran space station orbiting a vibrant blue-green world, a stark contrast to the desolate battlefields he knew, King Valerius turned to Commander Vance one last time. His deep red gaze held hers, an unspoken weight in his eyes. In my world, Commander, such loyalty, freely given, is rare, he admitted, his tone laced with a newfound, profound respect. You have shown me what it truly means. What it truly means to be bound not by fear or decree, but by something unyielding. Commander Vance met his gaze, her expression unchanging, reflecting a quiet, almost humble strength. Loyalty isn't about being told what to do, King Valerius, she replied, her voice steady. It's about doing what you know is right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Her words, though simple, held a gravity that resonated deeply within the Crimson King. He had fought in countless wars, had seen empires rise and fall like dust in the cosmic winds. Yet here, in the quiet determination of these humans, he had found a new kind of strength, one that transcended the mere mechanics of power, alliances, and duty. As they prepared to part ways, the king felt an unexpected sense of loss. He knew he would miss these humans, their steadfast resolve, their unwavering courage. They had shown him a glimpse of something rare, a fleeting yet powerful bond that went beyond mere alliances and treaties. They had made him feel less like a pawn in a brutal galactic game and more like a true comrade, one worth fighting for, one worth saving. When it was finally time to say farewell, the king extended his hand, a gesture he had never offered to any other species outside his own. You have my eternal gratitude, Commander, he said, his voice firm yet softened by something almost like pride. And my unwavering allegiance. The Kthar will remember this day. Your people will find an unbreakable ally in us, should they ever need it. That is a promise from the Crimson King. Commander Vance shook his hand, her grip surprisingly strong and steady, meeting his gaze with the same conviction she had shown on the battle-scarred surface of Xylos. We're glad to have you on our side, King Valerius, she replied, her words a promise as solid as any oath the king had ever sworn. In that moment, he knew that this was more than just a passing alliance. It was the start of something lasting, a bridge between their vastly different peoples, built on the bedrock of trust and shared honor. As the king watched their ship depart, disappearing into the endless tapestry of the stars, he felt a new sense of purpose ignite within him. He had been given a second chance, not just at life, but at loyalty, at belief in something greater than himself. These humans, through their quiet, unassuming courage, had shown him what it truly meant to be bound not by duty or fear, but by choice. And as he returned to his own people, to the remnants of a shattered empire, he carried with him the profound lessons they had imparted, a strength that came not from power or brute force, but from the unbreakable bonds forged in the darkest moments, bonds that could endure even in a galaxy teeming with treachery. The saga of the Crimson King and the unbreakable loyalty he discovered has come to an end. But our journey through the cosmos is far from over. If you are moved by the courage of humanity, or simply want to delve deeper into the mysterious corners of the galaxy, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We always love hearing from fellow space enthusiasts like you. And if you're ready for our next galactic adventure, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Alien Whispers so you won't miss any news stories. Join us as we uncover the greatest wonders among the stars.